Welcome to the Second Press podcast, a wine-ish podcast hosted by Brad Horn and Dan Kirby.
Healthy habit of strength training. Anyone who follows me on Instagram will know that I do pop up in my stories regularly. I post pictures of me wearing my slippers in the gym to keep warm.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Second Press podcast, a wine-ish podcast with me, Brad Horn, and my co-host Dan Kirby.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the first episode of the Second Press podcast.
Oh, it feels fresh and new and exciting.
Unlike the weather outside.
Oh, horrible. Always horrible. It's February. It's horrible.
It really is. It really is, mate. So obviously the premise of this podcast, we're going to have guests on bi-weekly, but at the beginning we're going to get 4 or 5 podcasts out to you as a bit of a chunk so you get to digest as much as you can of me and Dan.
Yeah, we want you to be able to binge the first 4 or 5 episodes so that you get a proper feel for the sort of stuff me and Brad are going to be harping on about most weeks.
Absolutely. So we're going to start off most weeks talking about trade news, but trade news that's relevant to consumers, to the trade, and actually just basically what we're interested that's going on in the wine world and the drinks world, mate.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in the wine world. There's all sorts of stuff, and there's things like, innovations, and there's things that affect consumers directly, and there's stuff that affects producers and, wine shops. So there's so much to talk about, and this is just a nice place for us to sort of air some of the more interesting pieces. So, Brad, what have you got for us to kick off?
The Six Nations is amongst us. I actually picked out something from that the drinks business posted about, and it's Jamie George, the ex-England captain, is now the brand ambassador for Nightimber English sparkling wine. As a rugby fan, and obviously as a sports fan, I thought Nightimber and sport, great, I'll talk about this. I want to get your thoughts, though, because it's great for Jamie, it's great for him to be an ambassador for pretty much England's sparkling wine, like the calling card. Whenever I go on press trips and things, I know Nightimber, it's great, but what else is out there as well? So it's really great for them to get ex-England captain, still playing obviously, but he's like number 2 now as the ambassador. But I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on like wineries and businesses getting like sports stars involved?
It's like my day job is brand ambassador for a vineyard, and so I spent a lot of time. I saw this news article pop up too, and I was like, one, we need to get Jamie on the show, and like, how do we reach out to Nightimber's press people? And then 2, I was like, well, hang on a second, I think this is a really interesting move from Nightimber because they've spent a lot of time, putting their money and behind things like, lovely flouncy la-di-da sort of opera and music and stuff, and they've got that lovely like pastel shaped like bus that they float around on, and then to sort of pivot towards something more like contemporary and sportsy, I think is a really interesting move. It's not something I expected Nightimber to do, but they have a really interesting like take on point of sale. They have a really interesting take on like positioning and brand and this sort of premium luxury world, and so to bring in like a rugby star from the sports world is quite interesting. And I think it's taking a leaf out of the book of other drinks industries.
Yep.
So if you look at, like, there's not many high profile sporting, winey, sort of contemporary people doing that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting move. And if you look at kind of brand recognition in supermarkets too, so Chapel Down, Nightimber are clearly the 2 biggest sparkling wine brands in the UK. And I think this kind of moves Nightimber out of a similar sphere to Chapel Down in terms of where they're trying to position themselves. Chapel Down doing, Chapel Down has done the boat races.
Yes, they have.
Like Glindbourne. And I think Chapel Down, like near where I am, they sponsor one of the Newmarket races or something, like one of the race courses.
Yep.
And so I think rugby is like a totally different sphere for Nightimber. I think it's a really good move.
I don't totally agree, and I'm not too far from Twickenham, so if Nightimber want to reach out, happily go and sit on a bus with Jamie, drink some Nightimber and chat about that move.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great thing to do. My buddy Max, as a separate side note, my buddy Max doesn't work in wine at all. He works in a totally different industry, but his industry like tech conference thing, he ended up with free tickets to England, Wales at Twickenham the other day. Doesn't like rugby.
Oh, brilliant. And a great win for England. No offence to any of our Welsh listeners. I'm good friends with a lot of Welsh rugby fans. Just not your day.
Yeah, not your day. Got trounced.
Not your day. We're not going to go into sports analysis, guys. I've got another story as well, Dan. Because obviously we're recording this just at the beginning of Feb. We've had dry January. Everyone was talking about it. And there was another piece in the drinks business that said, well, the International Alliance for Responsible Drinking's chief said, actually, dry January does bugger all. You should be responsible drinking throughout the year, which I totally agree. I think we should stop talking about dry January and actually be more responsible throughout the year. Take some days off. Think about what you're drinking. Think about what you're consuming. Drink better, not just drinking all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And for the first time ever...
You can say, Brad, you're talking rubbish, but
No, I agree. For the first time ever this year, I actually did a drink for January. And not because I wanted to stop drinking booze. I loved drinking the booze, but I wanted to just see if I could be a bit more healthy, lose a bit of weight post-Christmas. And honestly, cutting out booze is one of the easiest ways to lose weight, but it's also one of the easiest ways to sort of sit at home and drink pints of squash or Earl Grey tea. And you just think to yourself, oh, fuck's sake, I just wanted a glass of wine. And so I've been treating myself for the last weekend with a little couple of pints of beer at the pub the other weekend.
Man.
And then this weekend I just got back. I had a Sunday roast with my wife, and we had a bottle of wine between us. And it was lovely. It's just lovely to have a glass of wine again. And so I think I completely love the fact that people are studying the science behind this stuff. And does it make a difference? And I think it's brilliant that actually scientifically wise, little and often all the time in moderation and as part of a healthy diet is clearly the best thing to do. As soon as you cut anything out, you crave it. And so just have a little bit of what you like all the time. And if that fits for your diet and your lifestyle, just crack on. And now that that's a science-backed study, we can say that forevermore.
Yeah, exactly. I want to give a shout out to the Wine Industry Digest that actually brings all these stories together in an email, sort of a newsletter that you get weekly. And it comes to you and you get all these news stories together. This is where we're getting our newsy bits. So thanks to Adam and the team there, Wine Industry Digest. We're going to get our news from them. And yeah, it really helps me being in the trade, but sort of on the outskirts as well, get all the newsy things I need that are relevant to me.
I mean, there are so many publications for the endless cycle of news, whether it's in drinks or booze or whatever. Yep. And so why should I just sort of pick 5 or 6 of their most interesting sort of poignant pieces in the week and just chuck it in a really quick email to you? So
totally, really good idea. Okay, guys. Well, thanks, Dan, for that. The news roundup, that'll be coming to you every couple of weeks as well with these. We'll look at the news for you. And also, this is our first episode, so we also have guests on every week. And we are super, super excited for our first episode to get Anne McHale, Master of Wine, to talk about wine education. Also, she was a classically trained singer as well. Look out for that, guys. Get us later on. We'll be talking about some bits and pieces going on in our lives that you might want to listen to.
Here we go.
So we're here with Anne McHale, Master of Wine, to talk about her journey into wine and podcasting and wine education and also becoming an MW, which is harder than most degrees ever.
I mean, yeah, I'm having a crack and it's just so hard. So the fact that you passed is just baffling to me. And I don't know how anyone's done it.
Thank you. And hi, Brad, and hi, Dan. And I'm really honored to be invited on your podcast as one of your first guests. So thank you very much for that. Podcasting. I was just telling you before you hit record that I have launched my own podcast. I've had the idea for over a year. It's for diploma students. It's a private podcast, so more exclusive, still a free podcast, but you just sign up for it and then you can listen to it in your regular podcast app. So I'm very excited because I think podcasting's great. I listen to podcasts myself all the time.
Totally. And obviously with your podcast, it's very, very much wine education. That's what you're passionate about. And that's obviously one of the driving factors. Why is wine education so important to you and so important to the wine trade itself?
I mean, I think for the trade, we have a very complex product. I love how wine touches upon pretty much every discipline that you can think of, history, science, philosophy, geography, everything just overlaps with everything. And I've always found that endlessly interesting. So, yeah.
Absolutely, and I really love that, the way you've said and analysed that, and it really is. Wine can actually touch so many different aspects of life and the world, and I've loved people and places and travel, and that's what got me into wine. And other people might think the history of wine and that side of it. People might like the science behind it, and honestly, really, anyone who's studying anything at university can get into wine through a different avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as you've said as well, the kind of people that you meet when you're in wine are just all convivial, and they love a good time and they love good food. And so the people are a huge part of it as well for me.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you as well. Actually, it wasn't a question I sent you on the email, but obviously you're from Northern Ireland. How many Masters of Wine are from Northern Ireland? Do you know?
I'd need to check it. I think as it stands, there are 3 of us,
All right.
but Jane Boyce was the first MW from Northern Ireland, and that was in the 90s. So I'm far, far from the first.
But obviously in Northern Ireland, wine growing up, was it around a lot? Was it around for a lot for you? Obviously, for me, I'm from a working class background, so wine wasn't always the first thing that was put on the table. My mum liked a Valpolicella, but that's about as far as my mum's wine drinking went. But what about for you?
So I have quite an interesting backstory, which is all linked to wine in Northern Ireland and how I got into wine. So my dad in the late 1960s got into wine himself as a young PhD student at Queen's University in Belfast. And he got into wine by visiting Austria and actually drinking some Austrian Rieslings. Before that, he actually didn't really drink because he tried whiskey and gin and all the things that were available in Northern Ireland, and he didn't like the taste of them. Discovered Riesling in Austria, and then came back to Northern Ireland and realised that you couldn't buy good wine anywhere. So he founded a student wine society at the university, and the big wine companies sponsored them to drink the very best wines of the world. They drank First Growths, they drank Chateau d'Yquem, and they drank Top Meursaults and all of this. And so when I was growing up, he talked about this all the time, and he showed me the menus from the old dinners that they had. And it was around that time that he'd met my mum as well. So I kind of grew up with all these stories about wine. When I was old enough, we would always drink wine with dinner. And it was kind of very mythical and legendary for me. So when I went to university, the first thing I did was join the wine society as well. So I do have this kind of, like family interest, if you like, in wine.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic story. I actually love that. I didn't know that, guys. I'm pleased I asked that question. Dan, you can thank me later for that one, mate. You both obviously you're a master of wine. Dan's studied to be a master of wine. But what does it take to become a master of wine? I know several masters of wine. I know several people that have tried to do it, and I know it's super, super hard. What do you, Anne, think it takes to get there?
A range of different skills. I mean, it's very obvious that part of the what it takes is wine knowledge, right? So I don't think anybody is in any doubt about that. But I think probably what people underestimate about the MW is the extent to which you have to be good at expressing yourself in written form, and then the extent to which you have to master the psychological aspect of it, because it does require a lot of sacrifice and it does require a lot of focus. And I think people kind of underestimate what is required of that. They think, oh, I'm so knowledgeable and I'm prepared to study and I'm prepared to read and taste a lot. And that is essential, but it isn't enough. So you've got to practice expressing yourself well in writing. And then you've got to be really psychologically fit as well as physically healthy as well. Because, when you get to the exam week, it is kind of like, Olympic level test of endurance to get through those 4 days,
I'm nodding here, and Dan's nodding away because obviously he's been through that. And for you, Dan, I'm going to get you involved now, mate. Sorry, you've got to say something. What was it for you that you felt that was the hardest part?
So, having not passed yet, it's all pretty hard, mate. But the hardest part for me, really, was so many people have such a good opportunity to taste. And all the students try and do that all the time. But for me, the hardest part was taking those like tasting notes and tasting experiences and translating them into useful answers on the page. So when you hit the exam, you can recall these wines, but actually being able to turn them into tasting notes and like really like clearly identify why you think what the wine is. And so there's loads of people that could taste the wines and then identify maybe 10 out of the 12 wines in classes on study days and seminars. But the answers they were giving weren't that compelling. And so I think that's one of the hardest things to do in the MW program. And it's something that I worked really, really hard on. And so, and being able to give some students advice on how to go from tasting note and confidence in tasting to actually making those tasting notes useful is one of the most important things that Anne can sort of help with, and one of the things I struggled with.
Sorry, Anne, to butt in, but I'm going to ask you as well, because obviously I'd step back from the MW, because the MW is the pinnacle of wine. There's only, you could probably tell me, it's 400 and something MWs?
19, I think.
Thank you for that. I didn't write that in my notes. Sorry, Dan. 419 MWs. But obviously take a step back. Obviously you teach diploma students. And for that level, that's also a very hard qualification. So how do you go about teaching diploma students rather than MW students?
So we work off the same principle, which is that the people who arrive to do the diploma are already intelligent, capable, and very knowledgeable. And what I aim to help them with is shaping that knowledge in such a way that they can apply it successfully to the exam questions, whether that be for tasting or theory. I kind of tailor that to what's required in the exam. So it's a little bit different between diploma and MW. So depending on whom I'm coaching, I will vary, what I'm teaching. There's a lot of overlap between them. Once again, in diploma, they are written exams. So it comes down to being able to express yourself well in written form again. So I focus a lot on exam strategy, how to answer the questions in the way that the examiners expect. I also look a lot at study strategy. What can you actually do in the lead up to your tasting and theory exams to get yourself prepared? And then the mindset side of it, I'm very interested in that psychological aspect, as I already touched upon with the MW, and that applies to the diploma as well. So getting yourself psychologically ready, physically healthy, but also, having confidence in yourself and tackling any exam nerves that you may suffer from, because some students prepare, and then they arrive in the exam and their mind goes blank. Yep. Or they panic and, a wine that they would normally recognize immediately, they just don't. So you have to be prepared for all of those aspects rather than just having stacks and stacks of flashcards and learning loads of facts. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really handy resource. So, I did my diploma maybe 10 years ago now, and I chose, at the time, not to take on any, extra outside support. So I just did the classroom stuff, and I think that being able to offer that additional support is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely more help given than there would have been 10 years ago by various APPs who teach the diploma. But students still find themselves kind of slightly overwhelmed by the size, particularly of the D3 textbook. And they look at the D3 textbook and then they look at the exam questions and they kind of don't see the link between that mass of material and then, how you actually answer it in the exam. So I aim to bridge that gap. And I've helped lots of students succeed, so it's a nice feeling.
Well, that's why I got you on, because a lot of people talk about you in that regard and say, Anne helped me so much with the learning techniques and how to taste, and actually more the pressure, as in dealing with that pressure on exam day. Because obviously, if you haven't sat an exam since university or maybe even college, it really is hard to go back to that. And a lot of people get anxious. I'm thinking they're a teenager again and thinking, oh my God, I've got to sit an exam again.
Yeah. Not surprising. I mean, I sometimes still have flashback nightmares. I'm not going to lie. I finished my last exam in 2011, and I still sometimes have bad dreams.
Waking up in cold sweats thinking about that one wine you got wrong.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you don't wake up in a nightmare after this podcast appearance.
I hope not.
I'm actually going to veer off wine now for a bit. We've got another question. What's your passion outside of wine? Because obviously we're all in the trade and we talk about wine a lot. And we dive into countries we love or regions. But what are your other passions? If people don't know you, what are the passions that you like to get up to when you're not drinking a glass of wine?
Good question. I mean, I'll still say that my top favorite activity is drinking wine, but, with a good meal, with good company. That would be my ideal Saturday night, is out with good friends in a good restaurant, drinking good wine and maybe a cocktail or two. So it's probably still my top passion. In my spare time, what do I do? So I do listen to a lot of current affairs podcasts, which is a little bit bleak at the moment, as you'll probably agree. So I am trying to offset that with more good wine. No dry January happened for me this year. And I have developed a habit, which I maybe wouldn't describe as a hobby, but it's a healthy habit of strength training. So I do 3 strength training sessions in the gym. And anyone who follows me on Instagram will know that I do pop up in my stories regularly. I post pictures of me wearing my slippers in the gym to keep warm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
January in the gym can be treacherous.
But yeah, many people probably also don't know about me is that I was a trained classical singer, and I used to be a choral scholar at university. And although I don't sing in a choir anymore, I do like to blast out a few operatic tunes around the house, even if I'm just telling my husband to put the dinner on or something.
I absolutely love that. With my deep voice, we could do something together. Next time we're together, we're definitely going to sing a few tunes.
I find loads of time you ask people what they do, and outside of wine, there's something musical there. We've got loads of people coming on the show already, and we know that we want to talk to them more about their guitars or their piano or their, musical experiences than we do about the wine industry. So I think it's a really interesting thing that there's a creativity in wine.
It was quite a few years ago now, 2015, Richard Hemming, MW, had a wine trade band called Skin Contact. And I was the one of the backing vocalists for the band. So
is there any recording of this? Can we go back and find it, and Dan can play it underneath this little bit?
I'm going to put the YouTube link in the show notes.
Yeah,
check the show notes. Dan is on that now. I've got 2 more questions before we let you go, and obviously we're trying to keep these short because we don't want it to be boring, and we don't want it to be fun and quite vibrant podcast. So I didn't send you this one either, though. What's the first wine you can recall drinking? Obviously, you mentioned your dad and stuff, but what's the first wine you recall trying?
Okay, so this is another interesting, probably Northern Ireland related story. So the very first wine I ever tasted was probably I was about 10 years old, and it was after my parents used to have dinner parties, and then they obviously, probably had too many drinks and didn't clear anything up until the next morning. So my brother and I would sneak down on the Sunday morning, and hoover up whatever, usually desserts is what we went for first. But I remember tasting the wine from the glass, and of course it had turned to vinegar by then. So it was like, ugh. And I had in my mind that wine was disgusting, right? I don't even know what wine it was, just something red. Then at the age of 11, so I was brought up in the Catholic Church in Northern Ireland, and at age 11, you got confirmed into the church, and you took a pledge not to drink alcohol until the age of 18. So I was a very good, obedient child, and I took this pledge, and I stuck to it, unlike most of my peers. So from having that first glass of wine at age 10, I didn't have another drink until the day of my 18th birthday, and my dad gave me a glass of champagne, and I thought it was disgusting. It was so dry. I was used to drinking Schler, that sparkling grape juice, because that's what they used to give us kids when the adults were having champagne. And I remember looking over enviously at my sister who had her glass of Schler, and I was expected to drink this horrible, dry tasting wine. But I can tell you, it did not last long. It was probably within a couple of weeks I was hooked on wine. I just loved it.
Well, I'm glad it didn't, because we might not be talking to an MW today.
I know.
It'd be exactly. A Schler specialist.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's quite a privileged position to be in, to have champagne be your first glass of wine. So, I was quite lucky.
Certainly wasn't mine. One more question, and I've said Dan might shoot a few over as well, but I'm going to ask this because I think this is really we always talk about wine and what we've drunk, but I always think this is quite a hard one. What would be the last glass of wine you'd ever drink?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like
Yeah.
the desert island wine, isn't it?
But I'd get rescued from a desert island. Someone would rescue you. Like, they might not rescue me.
Okay, so it's kind of the death row wine then, really.
You said it, not me.
Yeah. Well, I've never been a cheap date, I'll be honest. So why go out, on a cheap wine? It would probably have to be one of the top white Burgundies. I think those are just, to me, the epitome of Chardonnay. So we're talking Le Montrachet or a Batal Montrachet or one of those Grand Crus. Love wines like that.
Now everyone's thirsty, even if you don't know where it is. I think people just, the way you say it, it's like, yes, please, I want a glass of that Chardonnay.
I think it was Jancis Robinson who said, you have to think tactically about a desert island. There probably isn't a fridge. It's probably quite, tropical and warm. So a Madeira would be perfect because it's not going to go off in the heat.
There you go. You talk about that, and actually, I've just got a bottle of Madeira here, just sat on the floor because they just last.
Just got a bottle of Madeira on the floor. Sure,
I really have, guys. Obviously, it's not on video, but literally, I've just pulled out a bottle of Madeira from the floor because it just lasts.
I think that level of detail about which wine am I going to have, and thinking about the storage and the conditions—that's just such a Jancis thing to be able to do.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
totally agree. And thank you so much for joining us. It's actually been awesome to chat for you and actually get to know you a bit more, actually. I think everyone on this listening will actually say, I get to know an MW that little bit more. You've been really, really great.
Lovely. Thank you for inviting me. Lovely to chat to both of you. And Dan, good luck with the studies.
So anyone wants to get hold of this podcast, whether they go, Anne, sorry, going to get another plug before we let you go?
Yeah, you can visit my website, mchale.com. There you can sign up for my email list for diploma students and also check out my new podcast for diploma students, which will also be available on the website. All the details of that, head over to mchale.com.
Thanks so much, Anne.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Hi, Dan. That was absolutely brilliant. She really, really was fun. Obviously, I've known Anne a little while, but to hear some of her stories, absolutely brilliant.
That was just a lovely conversation. Like Anne also, separate to the podcast, Anne also helped and facilitated one of our MW study days, and it was such a lovely, nice day. So it was really lovely to chat to Anne. I really enjoyed the fact that she wears her slippers in the gym. That's absolutely fantastic stuff. Brilliant.
I totally love that. And obviously, it's cold in January, so slippers in the gym. Guys, any more slippers in the gym, let us know in the Substack. Let us know how many people wear their slippers in the gym. I'd love to see it's more than just one. And also, like a classically trained opera singer, like very good classical singer. So I can't wait to hear her sing. I've not seen this band that she was in or part of, so I need to hear her sing as well.
Oh, that reminds me, I need to dig out the YouTube links and see if I can rustle up the old archive footage from Anne or singing as a backing track for the Skin Contact Band with Richard Hemming MW. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, we might have to get Richard Hemming on to talk about the band later on, guys. I'm gonna reach out to him probably in a few months' time. We'll try and get Richard on, and I'm sure he'll be able to dig some footage up for us as well.
Let's hope so.
Done. Before we let everyone go, what's going on this week, mate? What have you been listening to, watching, reading that's been interesting, drinking, if you are?
Oh, listening. Well, this week for me, busy week at work this week. So I'm up in York, which is nice. Get to go and hang out with some customers in York. I'm out and about with Virgin Wines in Manchester. Down in London for a day. So I'm out and about loads this week for work, which is really good fun. Like the best part of my job is getting out and about on the road and talking to people, and it keeps me connected to the industry. And so that's what I love doing. And so this week is a really busy week of trains and travel and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a good one. You'll see on my Instagram. You might have followed me already.
Good. Look out for Dan's Instagram about being in York. York's a great city, actually. Really, really fun place.
Yeah.
And for me, to be honest, this weekend it was NFL Super Bowl. I'm a big NFL fan, so I watched the Super Bowl with a few friends, listened to Bad Bunny. Didn't know any of the words. My Spanish, poquito, Pablo Español, poquito. That's about as far as my Spanish goes. Even with 3 months in South America as like a guy with hair and backpacking, it's pretty much gone, mate. It's pretty much gone. But I enjoyed the game. Tell you what I did have. I had a beautiful wine. We said only American product, so I bought a bottle of Russian River Pinot along from Maremma Estates, Don Miguel Vineyard in Russian River. Absolutely outstanding, guys. I'll get a little link so you can buy it, guys. It's around 50 quid, so it is punchy, but honestly, this wine bit of age on it. Could have been blind. You might have been like a warm burgundy. It was beautiful, and everyone in the room was like, "Brad, you bought like the best thing in here." They were just we stopped watching the American football. We was like talking about the wine and how good it was.
Amazing. I love Russian River Pinot. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Who's the agent or which shop where
I think this is with Fells. I think this wine is with Fells, or their portfolio is with Fells. I interviewed Christina, which is the winemaker's daughter, and she bought a bottle for me of this. So hopefully this is in the UK. I think it is. I did do a bit of Google searching before. There are other search engines, guys. I use Google. And they said,
we're not on the BBC, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to help out, mate. Just trying to make sure we don't get any feedback. I use Bing, I use Google, I use Firefox. All right, it's fine. So yeah, it is in the UK. Wonderful wine. Check it out if you can. Big NFL fan. Reach out if for next season. Obviously, this season's over.
Amazing. Sounds delicious, Brad.
Thanks,
mate.
You
so much.
Thanks, and thanks for joining us, guys, for the first episode. Hopefully, see you episode 2. And thanks so much, Dan.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.